Okay? So don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, all that sort of stuff.
Okay, what am I going to do? Start from the half, go
Start.
1, 2, 3, go over
No,
here, 1,
no,
2,
just go right straight up. Just go right straight up.
Not being happy with where my life is going, I decided to change it, and I took it and put it in my own hands. I had work clothes on, and I went to work and built some cars that no one's ever seen before.
It's my fault, but in the end it's my fault because I probably did wrong, but you shouldn't be picking at me. Don't pick at anybody. Don't bother anybody. You get picking at somebody. You know what happens? You get picking at a dog. It'll bite you.
You thought you knew Chad and Jolene. The sparks, the builds, the chemistry that made Bad Chad Customs appointment television for millions. But what if everything you witnessed was only half the story? What if the woman who stood beside Chad through every impossible deadline, every spectacular failure, every triumphant reveal was living an entirely separate life that nobody, not the fans, not the producers, not even Chad himself, truly understood?
It's not what you have, it's what you can make.
The Phoenix car build was supposed to be their crowning achievement, the ultimate testament to years of partnership, creativity, and unwavering commitment. Fans celebrated. The industry took notice. Everyone believed this was the peak of the Bad Chad saga. But here's what nobody knew. That victory was actually the quiet prelude to a revelation so unexpected, so profoundly human, that it would shatter everything we thought we understood about this iconic duo. And the way the truth finally emerged? Not through a dramatic on-camera confrontation or a carefully orchestrated press release. No, this bombshell dropped in the most unexpected way possible, during an obscure podcast interview that nobody saw coming. Are you ready to discover what really happened behind the scenes of Bad Chad Customs? The confession. Late one Friday night, a 15-second audio clip uploaded to a small independent podcast channel. Just 15 seconds, shaky audio quality, an exhausted voice that fans immediately recognized. But those few raw seconds were enough to send the entire Bad Chad fan base into absolute chaos. Why was Chad talking to a virtually unknown journalist instead of the major media outlets that had been covering the show for years? What could possibly have driven him to this moment of unfiltered honesty? And most importantly, what did he say about Jolene that changed everything? Here's what made this moment so devastating: his voice. Chad's voice is normally booming with enthusiasm, filled with that infectious energy that made people fall in love with the show in the first place. But in this audio clip, it was barely a whisper, the sound of someone who'd been carrying a weight so heavy that he couldn't hold it anymore. The sound of exhausted honesty. This wasn't promotional material for a new season. This wasn't manufactured drama designed to boost ratings. Even the show's producers were caught completely off guard. Can you imagine the panic at the network headquarters when they realized their biggest star had just dropped an atomic bomb of truth without their permission?
So it's day 4 of the 5-day bike build, and the metal flake has been sanded down with 400 grit just to get all the texture down. We initially planned on doing Wimbledon white flames.
The secret revealed. So what was the secret that had been hiding in plain sight for years? Before we dive deeper, think about all the theories that circulated about Jolene over the years. Some fans were convinced she was secretly funding the builds with family money. Others speculated she was a former Hollywood stunt double. There were even theories that her calm demeanor was just an act, hiding a fierce temper that exploded off camera. Everyone had a theory about who Jolene really was. But here's the thing about theories. They're usually wrong. And in this case, they weren't even close. The real secret wasn't about money. It wasn't about a hidden past career. It wasn't about anger management issues or a secret relationship. The truth was simultaneously simpler and infinitely more complex than anything fans had imagined. Jolene had been living 2 completely separate lives. Not in the scandalous way you're probably thinking. There was no affair, no illegal activity, no betrayal in the conventional sense. The secret revolved around something that predated her entire life with Chad. A deep, demanding obligation to care for an elderly relative back in her hometown. Now, you might be thinking, is that really so shocking? People have family responsibilities all the time, but here's what made this different: the sheer magnitude of what Jolene had been managing. This wasn't occasional weekend visits or phone calls to check in. This was intensive, hands-on caregiving that required her frequent, sometimes emergency absences from the show. This was a parallel life so demanding, so emotionally exhausting, that maintaining it while also being Chad's creative partner and on-screen personality required a level of compartmentalization most people couldn't even fathom.
Never been this many cars here before 9 o'clock. I'm having a big feeling that it's going to be a full house today. I like this little hot rod, eh? Tony Cadet? Yeah, cool. Looks good, man.
Why the secrecy? But why keep it secret? If this was such a compassionate, understandable commitment, why hide it from Chad? From the fans? From the cameras that documented seemingly every other aspect of her life? This is where the story gets even more complicated, and where we need to talk about the reality television industry itself. Jolene knew something that most viewers don't think about. The moment she disclosed this situation to the network, their contracts would have legally entitled them to document it. Camera crews in hospital rooms, producers turning medical emergencies into dramatic cliffhangers, her vulnerable relatives' most private, dignified moments becoming content for millions to consume. Think about that for a second. Really think about it. Would you sacrifice someone else's dignity and privacy for your career, even if that career was everything you'd built? Would you let cameras into the most painful, intimate moments of caregiving because your contract required transparency? Jolene made a choice. She decided that protecting her relative's dignity was more important than professional honesty. She chose to exhaust herself, to live this impossible double life, to risk her relationship with Chad, rather than expose a vulnerable family member to the predatory lens of reality television. Was that the right choice? The fans are still divided. But here's what's undeniable. It was an incredibly difficult choice that required enormous sacrifice.
Some people have opinions, some people have thoughts, and they say things, or somebody says something, and they really don't take the time and think. And that's why I always say it's easier to judge because you don't have to think.
The clues we missed. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Because once Chad's confession went public, fans started doing what fans do best. They went back through every episode with fresh eyes, looking for the clues they'd missed. And they found them. Oh, did they find them? Remember that generic rental car that sometimes appeared in establishing shots, parked several blocks away from Chad's distinctive vehicles? Now we know that was Jolene's car for her covert trips home. How many times did you see that car without even registering it? Remember those inexplicable delays in the filming schedule that happened every 6 to 8 weeks? Those multi-day breaks that were explained away as production issues or creative resets? Those were the times Jolene had to dedicate herself completely to her caregiving responsibilities. One particularly telling example. There was a major build where the final painting phase got delayed by 5 days. 5 entire days. Chad was visibly furious on camera, blaming supplier issues. But here's what really happened. That delay coincided with a medical emergency that required Jolene's immediate, uninterrupted presence back home. Chad took the heat for that delay. He absorbed the criticism from the client, from the network, from the fans. And all along, he had no idea why Jolene really needed to be gone. But the most heartbreaking clues weren't the logistics. They were the emotional moments that the editing team couldn't completely scrub away. Watch old episodes now and you'll see them. Jolene staring blankly into the distance during crucial brainstorming sessions. Chad snapping at her over minor issues, then immediately apologizing with unusual intensity. Those brief moments of tension that seemed like typical couple bickering but were actually the visible cracks in an impossible situation. How did we miss all of this? How did millions of viewers watch this woman living two demanding lives and not see the exhaustion written all over her face?
We're in the new shop right now because Doug's working on the Thunderbird. I just want to get over here for a minute and apologize for yesterday, of my behavior, and anything I say right now, it's my fault.
The internet explodes. When that 15-second audio clip hit the internet, it took approximately 6 minutes for #BadChadSecret to start trending worldwide. 6 minutes for millions of people to discover that their favorite show had been hiding a massive truth for years. Twitter became a battlefield. The fan base fractured immediately into two vehemently opposed camps: the Chad defenders and the Jolene sympathizers. And let me tell you, the hostility between these groups rivaled political debates. The Chad defenders argued that any secret, regardless of its compassionate nature, constituted a fundamental betrayal of trust. They pointed out that Chad had built his entire public persona around authenticity and transparency. How could he do that if his partner was keeping such a massive part of her life hidden? They felt betrayed on Chad's behalf, arguing that he deserved to know everything about the person he was building a life with. The Jolene sympathizers took the opposite stance. They defended her fierce protection of her relatives' privacy, arguing that some things are more important than television contracts and public expectations. They pointed out that her professional work never suffered. Every build got done. Every deadline got met. Despite the enormous personal stress she was managing, they praised her for prioritizing human dignity over fame. Within 24 hours, the original podcast clip had been viewed tens of millions of times. It had been dissected, analyzed, and debated from every possible angle. Entertainment journalists who'd never covered the show before were suddenly writing think pieces about reality television ethics and the right to privacy in the age of total transparency. But here's where things got really messy. The rush to break the story led to some spectacular journalistic failures. Several major gossip sites, desperate for clicks, completely misreported the nature of Jolene's secret. Some claimed she had a hidden child. Others reported she was in massive debt. One outlet even suggested she was involved in something illegal. These false reports created a chaotic misinformation storm that made everything worse. Chad and Jolene were forced to watch from a distance as their private truth got twisted into increasingly bizarre narratives, each one more sensational than the last. Can you imagine? You're already dealing with the most difficult moment of your relationship, being exposed to the world. And now you have to watch that truth get distorted beyond recognition by people who just want engagement and clicks.
Gives you more plastic. No, I know we're taping it on that side, but we'll cut it on this side and then pull the plastic over.
Ah, like right in here?
Yeah, just pull her over and run her right in there.
Jolene speaks. 2 days into this media firestorm, Jolene released a statement, not through the show's official channels, not through the network's publicity machine. She posted it directly to her personal social media accounts, taking complete control of her own narrative. And the statement was not what anyone expected. She didn't apologize. She didn't beg for forgiveness. Instead, she offered something far more powerful: dignity and clarity. Jolene explained the decade-long commitment she'd made to her relative. She detailed the specific logistical reasons why this person couldn't be moved closer to Chad's garage or integrated into their public life. She talked about medical conditions without sensationalizing them. She discussed the impossible choices she'd faced with a weariness that was palpable even through text. But here's the most important part of her statement. She confirmed that given the same choice again, she would make the same decision. She would still protect her relative's privacy, even knowing the cost to her relationship with Chad, even knowing it would eventually blow up her career. That single admission changed everything. Suddenly, this wasn't just a scandal about secrets and betrayal. This was a story about moral courage, about a woman who knew exactly what she was risking and chose to risk it anyway for someone who couldn't protect themselves. The statement concluded with a powerful plea. She asked the divided fan base to stop directing hostility at Chad. She pointed out that the real victims of all this public scrutiny weren't her or Chad, but the innocent family member whose medical situation had been unwillingly exposed to millions of strangers. She requested that everyone refocus on the custom car work that had brought them together in the first place. She wanted to de-escalate the personal drama and return to the craft they all loved. Did it work? Not immediately, but slowly, gradually, the narrative began to shift from scandal to sympathy story. People started to understand the impossible position she'd been in. They started to respect the sacrifice she'd made, even if they disagreed with her methods.
The reason I'm spraying at high pressure is because I don't want texture. I don't want texture in the paint.
The network's crisis. While all of this was playing out in public, an entirely different drama was unfolding behind closed doors at the network. Executives were absolutely furious, not because of the secret itself, though that was definitely a problem, but because this highly marketable drama had leaked through an independent source they couldn't control. They'd lost the narrative before they even knew there was a narrative to control. The first emergency response? Immediate suspension of all current filming. Lawyers started reviewing Jolene's contract with a fine-tooth comb, looking for any clause she might have violated. The legal team argued that her failure to disclose information that caused production delays could constitute a breach of contract. Think about that for a moment. Jolene was facing potential legal action not for doing something wrong, but for protecting her family members' privacy too effectively. Meanwhile, the marketing department went into overdrive, desperately trying to figure out how to spin this unexpected drama into a compelling season finale. How do you turn a real human tragedy into must-see television without looking like absolute monsters? And then came the truly desperate move. Sources report that the network offered Jolene a massive contract bonus if she would allow minimal, sanitized camera access to her caregiving responsibilities. Jolene's response? A flat refusal on ethical grounds. This is the moment where you really understand her character. The network was essentially offering her a fortune to compromise on the one thing she'd sacrificed everything to protect. And she said no without hesitation.
As we made a deal with TV, I built the cars, they made the show. And basically that's how it goes. But me and Jolene own the cars.
Can the show survive? Which brings us to the million-dollar question. Actually, given the show's viewership, probably the multi-million-dollar question: can Bad Chad Customs survive without Jolene? The network has been trying to find a replacement, and they're discovering something crucial. Jolene wasn't just a mechanic. She wasn't just a fabricator. She was a certified welder, an expert upholsterer, a keen business mind, and Chad's emotional translator to clients. She was the person who could take his wild, impossible visions and figure out how to make them real while keeping him grounded. No single person they've interviewed possesses that combination of skills, and even if they found someone with the technical abilities, they'd never have the authentic relationship with Chad that took years to develop organically. The show's entire premise was built on the magic of two deeply eccentric people who somehow clicked perfectly. You can't manufacture that with a casting call. But here's where it gets interesting. Maybe the show's survival requires it to fundamentally change. Without Jolene, Chad has been forced to evolve. He's hiring specialist technicians for the first time. He's brought in a professional bookkeeper and a certified head of fabrication. The chaotic two-person operation is becoming a more conventional custom car garage. If Bad Chad Customs continues, It won't be about the magical, spontaneous synergy of a couple anymore. It'll be about a lone genius learning to lead and manage a team. That's a fundamentally different show. Is different necessarily worse? Maybe not. But it's definitely not the show millions of people fell in love with. What commitment really means. The saga of Chad and Jolene forces us all to reconsider what commitment really means, especially in the age of reality television and total transparency. For years, we watched their commitment through the lens of shared professional ambition, building incredible cars together, achieving television success together. We assumed their personal life was just an extension of the on-screen partnership we saw. But Jolene's revelation proved that commitment is far more complex than public declarations and shared victories. Sometimes commitment means keeping parts of your life private. Sometimes it means sacrifice that nobody sees or appreciates. Sometimes it means exhausting yourself, trying to honor two completely different but equally important obligations. Jolene's definition of commitment was fierce loyalty to a vulnerable relative. She prioritized that duty above fame, fortune, and even her romantic happiness. Is that admirable? Tragic? Both? Chad is now learning that commitment can be expressed through silence and boundaries, not just through shared public experiences. That's a painful lesson for someone whose entire career is built on sharing everything with cameras and audiences. Their story is ultimately a devastating case study on the cost of maintaining a perfect public performance. Jolene spent years walking a tightrope between the authentic demands of private caregiving and the fabricated high-energy requirements of her on-screen persona. The pressure to constantly switch emotional gears from the sterile seriousness of medical care to the chaotic fun of the garage finally became unsustainable. Her downfall wasn't a moral failure. It was physical and psychological burnout from trying to be two completely different people simultaneously. The show demanded a whole person, but her life only allowed her to give half. The path forward. So where do Chad and Jolene go from here? That's the question keeping millions of fans awake at night. Can their relationship survive this revelation? Can they move past the hurt and find a path toward understanding? Chad's journey involves a complete paradigm shift. He has to move from feeling personally betrayed to developing deep respect for the moral weight of Jolene's sacrifice. He has to understand that her secrecy wasn't about not trusting him. It was about protecting someone who couldn't protect themselves. That's not an easy journey. Feeling betrayed is a deeply human response, but so is eventually understanding why someone made the choices they made. Jolene's path requires something equally difficult. She has to trust that Chad can now accept her life's necessary boundaries without resentment. She has to believe that he won't feel threatened by her external commitments or compete with them for her time and attention. Their future, whether romantic, professional, or some combination of both, depends entirely on their ability to redefine partnership. Not as the absence of secrets, but as the honest acknowledgement of life's painful complexities. Can they do it? Nobody knows. Not even Chad and Jolene themselves probably know at this point. Where things stand now. The official production status of Bad Chad Customs remains deliberately ambiguous. The network is maintaining calculated silence, maximizing speculation, and building anticipation for whatever comes next. The core filming crew is reportedly back on site. But here's what's interesting. All promotional material released so far conspicuously features only Chad working with his new team of specialists. Jolene is nowhere to be seen in any official capacity. The current production seems focused on a rebirth narrative. Chad learning to operate without his partner's genius to guide him. It's compelling television in its own right, watching someone figure out how to stand alone after years of collaboration. But rumors from anonymous local sources suggest something intriguing. Jolene has been occasionally spotted near the shop. Not interacting with Chad directly, but meeting with crew members, dropping off supplies, maintaining a shadow presence just off camera. Is the network secretly orchestrating a highly anticipated emotional reunion for the season finale? Are Chad and Jolene slowly finding their way back to each other behind the scenes? Or are these sightings just wishful thinking from fans desperate for a happy ending? If Jolene does return, and that's still a big if, speculation suggests it would be because her caregiving responsibilities have significantly eased or been resolved. That would provide a logical, compassionate reason for her renewed availability. But any return would necessarily come with strict contractual conditions guaranteeing absolute protection of her relative's privacy. That's a line Jolene has drawn firmly in the sand, and there's no indication she'll ever cross it. The most powerful potential narrative would involve Jolene returning during a moment of catastrophic failure. The exact kind of high-pressure technical problem that only her unique mind could solve. The prodigal partner returning to save the day, while also saving the relationship. It would be incredible television. Whether or not that happens remains to be seen. The lasting legacy. Regardless of what happens next, whether the show continues, whether Chad and Jolene reconcile, whether we ever see them build together again, this story has already secured its place in reality television history. This isn't just about a couple having relationship problems on camera. This is about the fundamental tension between public performance and private dignity. It's about the human cost of fame and the importance of drawing ethical boundaries around our deepest moral obligations. Jolene's secret, once a source of conflict and confusion, has become a symbol of personal integrity. She prioritized compassionate care over professional glory. She chose to exhaust herself rather than exploit a vulnerable person for entertainment value. In an era when everything is supposed to be shareable, when privacy itself is often treated as suspicious, Jolene's story reminds us that some things are more important than transparency. Some things deserve to be protected, even at great personal cost. The story of Chad and Jolene will be remembered not just for the incredible cars they built, but as a profoundly real illustration of impossible choices and unwavering principles. And maybe that's the most important build they ever created. Not a phoenix car that rises from the ashes, but a narrative that challenges our assumptions about what we're entitled to know about the people who entertain us. So what do you think? Was Jolene right to keep her secret? Should Chad have noticed what was happening sooner? Can their partnership survive this revelation? Or is this the end of Bad Chad Customs as we know it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This story is far from over, and the next chapter could be written any day now. Make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on, because when the next development breaks, you'll want to be among the first to know. The story of Chad and Jolene is ultimately about all of us, about the impossible balance between public and private life, about the things we sacrifice for the people we love, and about whether true partnership can survive when fundamental truths remain hidden. One thing is certain, we'll never watch Bad Chad Customs the same way again. Every episode, every build, every moment between Chad and Jolene now carries the weight of this revelation. The show we thought we knew was only half the story. And isn't that the most fascinating thing about reality television? The reality is always more complex than what makes it to the screen. Until next time, keep building, keep questioning, and keep remembering that everyone you meet is fighting battles you know nothing about.